What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video. My name is Nash, and today I'm going to be showing you how to build a college resume. So this is going to be a resume that you can use while you're in college to apply for internships, part-time jobs, or even full-time jobs when you actually graduate from college. So this is the same resume that I've used over my time in college. So I've used it to get internships, part-time jobs, and also used it to get a full-time job after I graduated from college. So it's gonna have a lot of things in there. Doesn't mean you have to have the same things, but this should give you a good understanding of how you can build a resume. And also, if you are, if you just want the template and you can fill it out, it is gonna be in the description below. There's a link, it's for sale. There's also a discount, so go ahead and hit the description and you're gonna see what the discount is and you can purchase that. But if you don't want to purchase it, you're gonna be able to see it on the screen and you can pause the video and copy that and you can kind of like format how it looks. So I'm gonna be going over this resume and I'm gonna break it down section by section so you guys can really understand my reasoning through how it's formatted and some of the things that I like to include on there. And also, one thing to note is this is a resume for most likely for business majors. There's no designs on the resume. It's just a resume that gets straight to the point, which is the resume that a lot of employers are looking forward to see. They don't want to see anything that's confusing. It gets straight to the point. So I'm going to be looking on my phone here because I have it on my phone. So if you see me looking down, I'm looking on the resume, but it is going to be on the screen somewhere here or here. I think it's going to be here. But let's go ahead and get started here. As you can see, we have the resume on the screen, and on the top, we have our contact information, right? So on the very top, we have our name, my name, right? That's gonna be your name if you're building this resume. So you put your name on the top, and as you can see, the name is bigger than any other text on the screen. And that's because sometimes when there's 10, 20 resumes on the table, someone is looking at them. If you have your name on top and it's bold, it's going to be easier to identify your resume, right? So a lot of people forget to put their names on the resume, or they'll put it but in really, really small text, which makes it hard to kind of like differentiate between the resume. So you want to make sure that your resume is easily identified as yours without, someone doesn't have to spend even a minute looking for your name on your resume. It's on the top. So underneath that, I also have contact information. So there's 3 different ways that someone can contact me. If they prefer calling me, my phone number is on there. If they want to use email, my email is on there. If they want to use LinkedIn, my LinkedIn is on there. And also for LinkedIn, it works in 2 ways, right? So sometimes they might like what's in your resume, but then they want to know a little more about you, right? So they're going to go on your LinkedIn. That is why you always want to have your LinkedIn on here, because sometimes you have a lot of experience that you're not going to be able to fit on the resume. And it's going to be on your LinkedIn. Those are the things that you put on LinkedIn. So whenever they see this link, they'll go on LinkedIn to find out more. All right. So that's why you always want to have these 3 types of contact information. You don't have to put your address on here. If you want, you can do that, but I wouldn't recommend putting your address on your resumes. So moving on to the first actual section here, we have education. So education needs to be the first section that you have, simply because that is what you're currently doing, right? You're in school and you're applying for internships, so education should be on the top. So under education, you can see that the first thing I have is going to be the name of the university that I went to. I know it says University of YouTube, but you can change the name to whatever college you go to. And underneath that, I also have the name of the degree that I was getting, which is Bachelor of Business Administration in Finance. And underneath that, you can actually add your GPA, but I recommend adding your GPA if it's only above a 3.5. You don't want to add the 2.6 GPA, right? You don't want to do that because you're going to be shooting yourself in the foot. So for me, my GPA was obviously lower than the 3.5. That's why I did not put it on there, right? But if you happen to have a good GPA, go ahead and put that right underneath the name of your degree. Now, on the right side, you see that I have my expected graduation. So you always need to put your expected graduation because that is going to give the employer kind of like a timeline as to, when you're going to be able to start if they choose to hire you without even wasting your time. Sometimes they need someone for that next month. So whenever they see you graduate maybe in a year, then they don't waste your time, right? Imagine getting a call thinking that you have the job, and then they're like, well, can you start next month? And you're like, oh, I actually graduate next year, right? That is a waste of time. So you always want to make sure that, that is some of the first information that they see, that there's no confusion about when you're going to be able to start or an expected start date. So underneath that, we're going to go to experience, right? So this is where you're going to be able to add all your jobs, part-time jobs, internships. If you worked at McDonald's, put it on there. If you worked at Walmart, put it on there, right? So I want to go to my first one here, which is the accounting coordinator. So as you can see here, I have the name of the position first, right? What was I doing? That is the name of the position. So you want to put that first, especially if it's related to the job that you're applying to, so they know that you've actually worked in that environment, or you understand some of the things that might come with the position that you're applying to. And on the same line, I also put the name of the company. It says the Blue Star Group, which is not a real company. I just changed the company that I was actually working for. And I also have the name of the city, right? So this is all relevant information. So putting the name of the city, you don't really have to do that, but I think it's important so that someone who's planning on hiring you kind of like know what cities you've worked in. And if you look on the right side here, you see that I also have October 2019 to March 2020. So that is the time frame that I was working at this company in this position, right? So if you're still working at that position, you always want to put October 2019 to present, right? Because you're still working in that position or that company, right? And also a tip, you always want to start with the most recent experience. So you start from the most recent to oldest, right, in that order. All right, so as you can see, the name of the position, the name of the company, the city, and the time frame that I've worked at, it's all in bold because this is important information. All right, so following that, you're gonna see that I have the bullet points that describe some of the things that I was doing while I was in that position in that company. So I only have 3 bullet points, and this is because this resume has a bunch of positions, right? So if I were to put 5 bullet points for each position, that is going to take up a lot of space, and you always want your resume to be 1 page long, especially if you're in college. There's no need for you to have a 2-page resume, right? So you always want to make sure that you fit it on 1 page. So one way to do that is to reduce the amount of bullet points, right? So whenever you put a description of what you were doing, try to include a lot of things in 1 bullet point, right? Don't make it a paragraph as well. I would limit it to 1 to 3 lines, right? Anything above 3 lines, try to figure out a way to make it short. So I'll give you an example here. The first bullet point under the accounting coordinator position, it says completed bank reconciliations, created invoices, and collecting on overdue accounts. So this covered 1, 2, 3, 4 things, or 3 or 4 things just in 1 sentence. So that's kind of like how you want to do it without using too many words, right? Because if someone is reading your resume, they do not want to read a paragraph. They just want to get to the point. So get to the point, get to the point, get to the point. But if you don't have too many jobs that you have to add to your resume, I recommend adding more bullet points, right? So you can add 5. I would limit it at 5. Once you go to 6, you're just doing too much. But you always want to make sure that it is, 3 to 5. 3 to 5 bullet points should be fine. And if you have a lot of positions, you always want to make sure that your bullet points, you keep a consistent amount of bullet points, right? So if I'm adding 3 bullet points for each position, I want to make sure that I want to keep that uniform, right? Sometimes you might add maybe 2 or maybe add 4. What you want to avoid is jumping from, adding 3 bullet points for 2 positions, and you get to the 3rd position, you add like 5 bullet points, right? So that's a little distracting. So the goal is to make your resume as clean as possible, as easy to read as possible, that someone can just look up and down and read the entire thing without getting confused or getting lost, right? And also being able to identify the most important information on the resume. So if you look on the next position here, which is the financial analyst assistant, this was actually an internship, right? So on the date here, if you go on the right side, it says summer of 2019, right? And that's kind of like a way you can use to kind of like identify your dates. If it's an internship for the fall, the summer, you don't really have to put the months, right? Unless it was for years, right? If you did it for, for 2 semesters, then yes, you might want to put, from May of 2019 to July of whatever. But essentially, if it's just the summer, the spring, the fall, is for the dates, you can put summer of 2019. spring of 2019, things like that. So that is another way that you can add your time frame or dates when you were doing that internship or job. All right, so here's a tip when it comes to actually describing some of the things that you were doing in a finance position, accounting position, anything in business really. There's going to be numbers attached to what you're doing. So if you look on this second position here, you can see that you want to add the numbers. You want to be able to quantify what you're doing. So this means that if you were processing 200 invoices per day, you want to make sure that you put that number in your resume. So from my first position, I didn't really do a good job at that. But for some of these positions here, I was able to put those numbers down. If you were, if there's anything that you can really quantify, that is really going to help you. That is going to help the person that's looking at your resume kind of like have an idea of what you're doing. So a good example would be my next position here, which is a fiscal services intern, pretty much like a finance intern. On the second bullet point, you can see that I was processing over 50 purchase orders, right? And you can even go down here, I was verifying over 200 city vendors. So this kind of like quantifies what I was doing, and this is going to give a different perspective to someone who is actually reading this and trying to kind of like make it make sense in their head. It makes more sense to them when you attach numbers to it, right? When you quantify what you're doing. So moving on to the next section here, which is going to be the professional development. So if you have participated in anything that develops you professionally, that is what you want to add on here. So for me, I have an example here, something that I did when I was in college, which was a leadership conference where they talked about leadership skills and things like that. So this is something that's really important to add on here, so they know that you've had some type of training when it comes to leadership, right? Because this comes with being able to work with other people, like teamwork, which is really important, and other things as well that are good for the different positions. All right, so moving on to the next section, which is going to be leadership and activities. So this is going to be things that you did in college. So if you were in clubs, if you played sports in college, this is where you're going to be able to add these. So as you can see, for me here, I have the first one is going to be my fraternity. And you can see that underneath that I have my position, which was president, and a little description. So for these, you don't really have to go crazy on the bullet points. You can add one bullet point, kind of like summarizing what you're doing. So for this position, you can see that I put I was the face of a business fraternity with over 40 members, right? And underneath that, I also put another position that I had within that fraternity, which was vice president of finance. You can see that the description is one bullet point, and it just essentially just sums up everything I was doing. I was managing over $6,000, which was coming from dues and fundraisers and sponsorships. So this is where I recommend that do not just join a club. When you join a club, make sure you go ahead and contribute to it. Maybe as the president, as the vice president of finance, as there's so many positions in these clubs in college that look good on your resume, especially if you're applying for internships. These are the things that they want to see. How are you involved, at your college, and what do you actually do in the things that you're involved in, right? So you always want to have those, I'm VP of this, I'm president of this. All right, so for the last section, you also have skills and interests. So these are going to be things that you weren't able to add anywhere on the resume above here. So these are going to be things that you did not add anywhere else in the resume, some of the things that you want your employer to know. So you can see that these are divided by advanced proficiency and intermediate, right? And underneath my skills, I also have affiliations, which are the clubs that I was in college. So this really helps you if you're part of a professional fraternity. If someone who is looking at your resume happened to be someone who was in your fraternity, maybe back in the 80s, back in the 90s, or they just graduated and they happen to be in the same fraternity as you, this is a good way to let them know that you're in the same fraternity. Or if someone is affiliated with an organization that you're affiliated with, that's going to give you an advantage over someone that is not affiliated with that organization. There are times that I have gotten a job because the person that was hiring was in the same fraternity as me. All right, so putting those organizations that you're affiliated with on there might help you. You also don't want to put, if you're involved with bad organizations, don't put that on there. Don't put that, that's going to hurt you. That is not going to help you. All right, so that is pretty much it when it comes to how you can build a college resume. So this was a resume that I've used to apply for internships and things like that. But obviously, after you graduate from college, you have your first job, your resume is going to look completely different. It should not look like this. And one thing that I want you guys to note when it comes to, as we went through this resume, there was nothing related to high school. You need to remove anything that you did in high school, take it off of your college resume, right? Because it's irrelevant. Same thing as after you graduate from college and you work your first job, you want to remove all of those things that you had from your college resume. So I'll probably make a video on what my resume looks like now, the one that I use that's more updated, that has nothing to do with college. So let me know if you guys want to see that video, but that is pretty much it for this video. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Once again, the link to download this, the template, is going to be in the description below. There's also going to be a discount code, so go ahead and check that out. But thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.